We've looked at the properties of humans. Now we're going to look at the properties of land. What is necessary for land? What is proper to land for it to be land? When we talk about land, we're talking about it from its economic perspective, which is not simply the dirt. When we talk about land in economics, we refer to everything external to humanity, everything that exists that is not the result, is not caused by human agency. And so land is a lot more than simply dirt. It includes the animals, wild animals, natural vegetation, air, water, space itself, and even things like natural radiation, light, heat, cosmic rays, the radio frequency spectrum, all as they exist without human agency. There may be other things in that list. Basically anything that exists. The sun is a part of the land, the stars, the moon, everything. The properties of land is that it has spatial properties. It is proper for it to occupy space, and in fact it's defined as a location on Earth. When we talk about land property, we're usually talking about a tiny part of the Earth's surface. It's defined by its boundaries. It is proper for land to contain minerals. The other aspects that we're including, the wild animals, the vegetation, the air, and so on, they are proper to the land. In other words, that aspect of the universe that hasn't been made by man. And also, when we look at the land as farming land, say, we're looking at things like its chemical makeup, its geology, its topography, and its fertility, its ability to grow things, vegetables, matter. Okay, so that's they're what is proper to land. And you can see that a number of those include things which are important for human existence, because we need space and we need the plants that come off the land, we need the animals, and we take those and we develop them more than how they exist in nature without human agency, for our needs to give us food, clothing and shelter. Humans have a common need for access to the land. Because we have bodies and they take up space, we need a space for us. We can't be excluded from the land. If you did that, you would be doing somebody an injustice, especially considering that we have no necessary connection to the land. And so the land, as surface of the earth, provides the space for living, place for shelter and production, and for just the other doings of life. It provides the raw materials for adding labour to produce things useful for life. That can be as simple as the rocks and stones to build a house, the what we collect from vegetation, or wild, say, collecting wild berries and so on, eating wild animals as food, using the skins of wild animals for our clothing and so on. And in all of those cases, to take the things of the land, the raw materials, we have to add some labour to make them useful for life. Sometimes that labour mightn't be very much. I could be walking through a forest and pick a berry off a tree as I walk past. Doesn't appear to be very much labour. But on the other hand, I will often spend a lot of money to get, let's say, fruit, using the labour of other people. Say when I go down to the supermarket to buy some blueberries or what have you, I don't know where they grow or how to grow them, but other people use their labour to collect those blueberries and probably grow them a lot more efficiently than they would in the wild. And so we look to land to provide two necessary things for human life: space and raw materials. Fundamentally, humans have an equal right to the land. We're not born with some block of land which is ours. We might do that through the conventions of society. We might be born into a family that owns a farm or owns Tasmania or whatever. But those things are only conventional. The reason that someone might own a farm is because in our society that has been permitted within a complexity of conventions, of arbitrary rules that are there to better order human social life. And by and large, we are a lot more productive, a lot more peaceful, a lot happier, shall we say, as a result of the convention of allocating land in certain ways. We don't simply allocate land to private property necessarily, and we've got to explore private property, but we might also allocate it to things like public roads, areas of the planet that we choose to allow public access to, such as beaches or national parks, the oceans, whatever. And these are conventions that are done across humanity. We also add our labour, which is really a part of our life, to the land in ways that are linked to place. If I go out and plant seeds in the ground somewhere, it might take 6 months for those seeds to turn into a crop. And all of that time I might be looking after it, keeping the weeds out, stopping wild animals from eating the partly growing plants. And so my labour might be, well, certainly it grows in the land because I'm continually adding it to it. I'm spending part of my life, which I could be doing something else with, to produce that crop. And there are many ways that we invest our labour into the land, simply by clearing the land, certainly by planting it, and then by managing, caring for those things which I have put into the land. It could be plants, it could be animals, it may be as a mine. When we look at that, we can see how our efforts, our labour, is fundamentally linked to the land, or little bits of the land, to produce portable products that are useful for humans. Food, houses, clothing, machines, fires. They're all things which take human effort to produce using the raw materials from the land. That then produces a complexity because the relationship between the labour and the land is one of the fundamental questions in economics. But before we get to the economics, we have to have ownership, and that's where the law is interested in property. If we look at the properties of the land which is valuable to humans, we've mentioned most of them. Minerals in mines, maybe even just rocks, are important. The water, naturally growing vegetation and animal life, air, and our necessity to use a certain amount of the land for our own purposes. When I go to bed at night, I have to have a place to lay my head, and that means there has to be a little square of the Earth's surface which is then available only to me, because if somebody else tries to lie in my bed, it gets a bit crowded, and one way or another I'm pushed out, or they are pushed out, they have to find another place. We allocate our interest in the land according to some of these qualities. For instance, we allocate the right to mine the land with mining leases and so on. And so we say, well, there are some people want to be miners, they want to dig out the coal or the gold or oil or whatever it's going to be. And so that's valuable to humans, and so the land can be allocated for that purpose to a private individual or group. The right to the naturally growing valuable things in the land, they can be the minerals, it also often includes vegetation and animal life, is a right to the common land. I can be walking through Crown land, common land, and I might find something that is useful to me, maybe some sticks to light a fire or something, and if I have the right to collect those, which really means that every stick I pick up off the forest floor is a stick that somebody else can't have, okay, that is a right that's given to me. In law, it's referred to as profita pronda. The profit is the general benefits that can be taken from the land. And so when I talk about profita pronda, I'm talking about a situation where I have the right to go onto a land, not to live on it, not to grow crops on it, not to build a factory on it, but simply to pick up the wild things which are there, or the things which are there as a result of nature. Again, sticks and stones, vegetation, animal life, go chasing rabbits or wombats or something. And if I have the right to do that, it's something that society has given me, and we call it profita pronda. Air, it seems to be almost so obvious we don't worry about it, but it can be quite important, especially when the people next door are doing some very unpleasant thing with the atmosphere that makes breathing very difficult. It's something which is probably becoming a bit of an issue for people concerned about what we're passing on to future generations, the quality of the air. We've mentioned occupation, and there are two types of occupation. There's exclusive and non-exclusive. Exclusive occupation means that because I'm living here, you can't. Because I have planted seeds in this part of the Earth's surface, I don't want you running your cows through it, or digging holes in it, or building a house over it, because it's necessary for me to be justly, protected in the labour that I'll put into the land, planting the seeds or what have you, to be able to exclude everybody else from it. However, there's a lot of non-exclusive situations. For instance, if I'm using a paddock to grow some stock, some cattle, sheep or whatever, that doesn't mean that it prevents other people from maybe walking through it, maybe chasing the kangaroos that are running around in it, to be able to maybe camp there as long as they're not damaging those things which are naturally mine, the fruits of my labour. So if they tear down the fences or what have you, or if they burn out my crops or what have you, that's unfair. But there's a lot of non-exclusive rights. We recognise those often in Western property rights in the form of easements. An easement is a right to some aspect of the land which is short of ownership, and usually they are so that right of access is permitted. In some cases it might be related to some infrastructure that might be built under the ground, a cable or a pipe or whatever. It's important to be able to come in and get access to repairing and maintaining those things, those pipes and cables and whatnot. And so I have an easement which then prevents the owner of the land. He might have a paddock and I have telephone cable or internet cable running through it under the ground. He can still use it absolutely for his grazing purposes, but that easement means he can't dig a well on the easement because it will damage the pipe. He can't build a building over it because that would then prevent my access and so on. And so an easement is something which is kind of a form of cooperative use of the land.